It's I believe the Jaguars' offense is underrated. I believe it's underrated on the offensive line. I believe it was underrated at the wide receiver position. It's not rated at the tight end spot, okay? It's not even overrated, underrated. It's just not
Incomplete.
rated. Yes. And the backfield now with James Robinson, I think the question with James Robinson, even without ETN, was like, okay, can he do that again? I mean, that was pretty sensational. Can he do that again? Well, now you don't even really have to ask that question. Can he be pretty good, and can him and ETN be a great combo? Like, that excites me, and I like it. I have said this for the last 7 months. What's really interesting about Trevor Lawrence coming to Jacksonville, and what feels so good, is not just because he's such a good quarterback, and it looks like he can't miss, and his floor is going to be good, and all the things that we envision and hope and want and all that stuff out of Trevor Lawrence in this franchise, is the fact that a lot of times guys that are young quarterbacks, especially top picks, walk into situations where their offensive line's a mess. They don't really have a lot at wide receiver or running back. They might have a guy or two, but they were terrible the year prior, and so therefore they probably got to build that offense around the young man. That's not Jacksonville. Jacksonville has a pretty good offense on paper. Last year, their problem was mostly the quarterback position. And if you thought the wide receivers weren't good enough, they went out and got Marvin Jones. They've added some others for depth that we're going to talk about in a moment. If you didn't think their running back game was dynamic enough, they went and got Travis Etienne, who can catch passes, and I think he's going to beat people in a lot of different ways on offense. And then you put Trevor Lawrence around that. Yeah, there's still holes. There's holes potentially on the offensive line. Not everybody's in love with it. I just think it's better than most people think. And there certainly are holes at tight end. And in this day and age in the NFL, really the dynamic offenses seemingly do have a tight end that contributes. But I'm excited for Trevor Lawrence for a lot of reasons, but one of them is he walks into a situation that is pretty good on the offensive side of the football. And, Stuart, I think you might even have the depth chart right there because there's a roster sheet, and it might be right near my seat. If you grab that and you look at the receivers from a name standpoint, it's pretty good. You know, I mean, these are names that we know from fantasy football in the past, from college football in the past, and from guys that have done it in the NFL already, either here in Jacksonville or other places.
Which shouldn't surprise you when you consider it was Urban Meyer who put this team together, that it would be some names that you recognized from the college days or some guys who popped in the NFL over the last couple of years, because as he was assembling this roster, you know, you don't have the full ability to get guys in for interviews. So sometimes you're going a little bit more by name and by what you see on paper than maybe the more in-depth stuff that you'd be able to get with a more normal offseason is one way to certainly look at it. But, so I do have the depth chart in front of me and the full list. For our exercise today, how many – I guess one of the key pivoting questions to start with is how many wide receivers do the Jaguars keep when they cut it down to 53?
Well, and that's really the ultimate question, right? The ultimate question
That's why we
is
asked
how
that
many
one first.
do you keep? Yeah. And listen, most teams will keep somewhere between 5 and 6. I mean, it's 5 or 6. And from a special team standpoint, you get your punt return guys. You know, I would say I would plan on 6 being a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think the first few are really easy, right? We know it's Marvin Jones. We know it's DJ Chark. We know it's Laviska Shenault.
That's half of them. 3.
I think there will be some debate on Colin Johnson, although I really don't think there's much debate. I think Colin Johnson's on the team and going to be a part of this because he gives you something that the others don't, and I like that. And I think he'll be a red zone threat, and I think they can utilize him. I think they like Colin Johnson. I think there's a lot to like about Colin Johnson. And I think Colin Johnson's on the team. So for me, there's already 4 spots basically locked up.
Well, I was going to say, and Colin Johnson, outside of DJ Chark, he's the only other receiver who's over 6'2".
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
You let that sink in. I mean, it is not a tall group as a whole. Chark is 6'4", Colin Johnson 6'6". Everyone else is 6'2" and below.
Wow. Yeah, that's it. I didn't even think about it like that. But, again, that represents different.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Dynamic. Gives you something in the red zone, so go up and get it kind of situations. By the way, with a guy who can throw it and go up and get it territory and make it very catchable. I think Colin Johnson actually has a chance to have – I don't want to over-dramatize and say a big year, but I think a balloon year from where he was last year with just a couple of touchdowns and however many. I think he had like 19 catches or something.
Well,
like
fantasy football, you always look to that second-year wide receiver to have that big breakout statistical year.
So go down the list of receivers that you have in front of you.
Sure.
And, just go ahead. Go ahead, name the names, and it gets interesting.
All right, here are the others, not including those 4 that we just mentioned. So Jamal Agnew.
Okay, so stop right there. I'm going to stop you on each guy. Jamal Agnew is interesting because they went out and got him. He was one of the first guys they signed. And this is where, like, okay, are they keeping 5 guys, 6 guys, 7 guys? Well, I believe this guy's a punt returner, right? That's where he's going to make his hay in the return game. And that's why they brought him in, to solidify special teams, be dynamic on special teams. He can do some things on offense, but he really hasn't done a lot in his career. So I'm almost not sure I even count him against the Jaguars wide receivers because I think he's on the team. I just don't think he's going to do much on the outside.
Indeed. And when I look at the wide receiver group, I kind of group him and 2 other guys together as guys who are fighting for one spot in Jamal Agnew, Pharoh Cooper, and Laquan Treadwell as that special teams guy. And you're talking about some of these guys who are late adds to this roster, certainly in Cooper and Treadwell, who both just came in the offseason. But personally, I think only one of those 3 is still on the roster come end of training camp.
I almost feel like Jamal Agnew's like guaranteed to be here based on the deal that he signed. It wasn't crazy, but it was like kind of like, okay, you're on the team. It was like they sought him. He was one of the top guys to go get in that return game. Treadwell there's your name guy, Pharoh Cooper, Treadwell. We've heard of these guys.
Yep.
The game just hasn't translated to the name, especially for Treadwell. But he's really intriguing. You watch, okay? I guarantee you, he's the guy that when people go out to camp, and when we go out to camp in these next, let's just say the first 2 weeks, we'll be like, whoa, Treadwell. Oh, Laquan Treadwell. Like we're gonna be wowed by some of Laquan Treadwell. That's my guess. And you know how we all latch on to something like that?
Always. It's usually a receiver because they make the flashy plays.
Yeah, and of course, you're right. Our eyes go to that anyway. And he's a physical specimen, man. Like, he is like, whoa. And even Urban Meyer said when they came to him and said, hey, we're going to bring in Laquan Treadwell, he was like, oh, that guy's out there? Like that was his reaction. And I think that's a lot of people's reaction because we saw him play in college. Just never manifested itself in Minnesota for him. So I don't think all of a sudden like this light bulb goes on. So I can't imagine he's going to make this, although I do think he's going to be a camp story that we're talking about. And he's going to put some pressure on the Jaguars brass. I keep an eye on him. Pharoh Cooper I probably have on the outside looking in.
All right, going along the lines of Agnew and a guy that the Jaguars picked up in free agency, how about Philip Dorsett?
Yeah, Dorsett is interesting to me because I don't, again, speed, right? What did Urban Meyer say? He wanted speed. And so you bring in a guy like Dorsett. At times he's really done well in his NFL career. But I don't know if this is the right way to think about it, but the way I envision them using ETN in the pass game is not necessarily the same way as like a Dorsett, but I think he's going to do some of the things that might make Dorsett not matter that much, if you get what I'm saying. And so it's going to be really interesting to watch these couple weeks in camp, where they utilize him, how they utilize him. I'm not even sure we'll be able to see enough of that, maybe the couple preseason games, but that was a speed play for the Jags on offense because they want to get faster. And with ETN in the draft, keep in mind now, the draft came after free agency and some of those kind of pickups. I don't know if there's a home for Dorsett on this team for the Jags.
I'm with you on that. When they made that signing, even before we had the draft, I was, somewhat skeptical about where Dorsett was going to fit in on the team. He didn't play all of last year. He's a guy who's only got 15 career starts in 5 NFL seasons.
Yeah, how many catches does he have in his career?
He has 124 catches over that time period.
I think he's like he's a guy that you'd like to use kind of in a gadgety way at times, and utilize the speed. And I just think the Jags have enough of those guys. I mean, they got a gadget potential guy in Laviska Shenault, not really speed play, but now they have ETN to use in that role. And they could even use Agnew in in some of these kind of plays. So, yeah, I don't know. Right now I have like a guy like Farrell Cooper out. I have Dorsett I don't think is going to stick. And I think Treadwell's going to open up some eyes, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to make it because of the numbers game. Go on.
You talked about the draft. How about the draft pick? They did pick a wide receiver in Jalen Camp.
Yeah, Camp's funny to me on what they can do with him. Can they store him on the practice squad and nobody's going to go get him? I think they can. But I also don't believe he's going to make an immediate impact. I think Urban Meyer and I think Trent Baalke both said it right around draft time. This guy we're not really counting on to, like, from day one be a guy. You know, he's green. We gotta do work on him, but we love his talent and his skill set. We love the pick, and I think to me that equates to okay, we're gonna have to bring this guy along. Not necessarily project. Project's a little too severe, but we have to, like Ben Barch was a bit of a project, but we're gonna have to bring this guy along a little bit when it comes to camp. I think you're okay to just throw him on the practice squad. I don't see anybody going to grab him, but you got to be aware of that stuff. So I think he ends up on the practice squad, man, even as a 6th-round pick.
Little fun fact for you about Jalen Camp. He's actually a year older than Laviska Shenault.
Really?
23 years old as he enters the NFL.
He's a big body guy. Now he's
6'2", 220.
Good-looking athlete right there. He'll pop at camp too. He'll pop because he's a good-looking player.
Are you saying he'll be a camp story?
Yeah, I think he'll be someone. I don't know if he'll pop. I think like Laquan Treadwell will be more of the story. You watch, like he'll be like people are like, oh, now look at what they're getting out of Treadwell. Keep an eye. Like he'll be that kind of story. I'm not sure Camp will be that. I was like Camp, man. I see him flash. I can't wait to see more. He'll be that kind of story, which is a little more modified in camp.
I was kind of alluding to the fact that any story on Jalen Camp will be a camp story. But you know what? It's hard to get those jokes across when you're 6 hours drive away from me.
Yeah, not really. Actually, I just totally missed it, and it was kind of great that I missed it.
It was. No, it really
was.
was.
Casey, you saw his face. Did we hurt his feelings by missing that?
It was a pretty long look at me to see if I caught it, so I gave him a little smirk, and then you just kept going, and he slowly got more sad.
Hey, listen, I'm locked in here. I'm locked into the wide receiver position of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't have time for your silly puns.
Yeah, here we are.
So are we done?
We got 3 more.
Yep.
So you have Josh Hammond, the Gator who spent last year on the practice squad.
Yep.
You've got Josh Amaterbebe,
and
you've got Tim Jones.
Yeah, I really don't have much for those guys. I think, those guys will come into play with if there are injuries, quite frankly, and I don't see anybody there grabbing my attention enough. So if we revisit this position, we say DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, no doubt. Laviska Shenault, I believe Colin Johnson as well. You with me on Colin Johnson?
I am. I love the idea of a 6'6" wide receiver with Trevor Lawrence. Just that combination of 6'6" to 6'6". I am very excited to see what that looks like.
Okay, so we have that. We have what else? Camp, I'm going to the practice squad. Those other 3 guys you just mentioned, they might end up on the practice squad. They might get cut, probably cut for a couple of those guys.
Are you counting Agnew as one of the 6 wide receivers? Or are you fudging him into a different group?
I was trying. I think I have to put him in there.
I think you do.
I don't know where else to put him. You don't put him in as a return, Specialist is the kicker and punter and the long snapper,
Right.
So I think I have to put Agnew in there. And so that leaves one more spot, and my candidates are Dorsett, Cooper, Treadwell, who am I missing? Camp. Although I already said Camp I think is going to end up on the practice squad. So those 3 guys?
Yeah.
Dorsett, Cooper, Treadwell?
I do believe that is where we're at, yes.
Yeah, I think well, you know what? That being said, then maybe Dorsett's not on the outside looking in. Maybe I think there is room for Dorsett. I'm gonna predict that Dorsett is on the team. Cooper is not, and Treadwell's gonna make us think about it. He's gonna give us some flash and be like, you know what? That might be pretty good. So that's.
I'm gonna go with the dark horse personally. I'm gonna go with a guy like Amaterbebe.
Really?
Yeah. One, because I like saying his name, and
It
two,
looks harder than it is to say, doesn't it?
What's that? It looks harder than it is. It's if you just say it a couple times to yourself, you'll be fine. I just feel like he is one of those guys who's had the potential for a long time, and I'm going to throw a little stock in the coaching staff's ability to pull that out of him. Now, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I always like it when you get these out-of-nowhere stories in training camp with undrafted free agent wide receivers, and I'm just going to throw out the fact that he's wearing number 88 as a good sign that maybe he's the next Allen Hurns that comes out of nowhere.
That'd be good. That is a popular position for players like him to pop and come in. Again, injuries are a factor here, too. Hope everybody stays healthy. I really like the Jags' front four guys. Keep in mind, I believe Etienne's going to be a big factor in the passing game. Big factor in the passing game. So I almost include him. I know he's a running back.
Tight end situation.
Yeah, which hopefully will help out that tight end situation because you're not going to be throwing too many, most likely, to those guys. So that's interesting.